Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting. Episode 16, Efficiency versus Experience.
Hello, everybody. Corey Kraychek, Rachel Brown, both here again, present live. Strategy Sessions, episode 15.
Unreal.
Rachel Brown,
Yes, sir.
you ready for this, man?
I am.
You know what? I take that back. It's not episode 15. I was testing the people at home. We actually just published episode 15. This is episode 16. They just happen like rapid fire, man. You know, every
Time
week
flies
goes
when
by.
you're podcasting, man.
Right.
Time
Exactly.
flies.
Exactly. Well, and you're in for a treat today because I think this is the first time that you'll have the opportunity to interact with this guest, right? You've never met this guest before or
No.
have seen them in social circles or industry circles. And I had a really incredible first encounter with this gentleman about a year ago. And ever since then, I think he and I kind of follow each other on the social media and career spheres and LinkedIn and try to support each other the best we can. But let me introduce him. And then we'll talk a little bit about that chance encounter and what he's been up to, and then the topic of the day, which is operational balance. So with that, right? So Mr. Joseph Quintela, right? I got it right?
Got it. You got it, Corey. We have hard last names.
I know. I always try. I put unnecessary pressure on myself with a last name like Kraychek that I really want to get people's last names right the first time. But Joseph is Director of Operations for Amada and Village Whiskey by Chef Jose Garces. And that's a division of SPB Hospitality. So Joseph is a Philly-based guy, and we met Rach last year at the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board and Philly Mag's Wine Festival. And Joseph is one of these cool cats who knows a ton about wine, but also understands the power of an emerging region and wants to be supportive of local, which automatically, right, puts us in the
You're
nice
my favorite person. Thank you so much. Automatically in my top 5 people.
I was telling Corey, you know, I moved to Philadelphia 5 years ago, and sometimes the converted are the greatest zealots, right? And Pennsylvania wine, I think, is an incredible industry. I've had the fortune to get to experience it in the vineyards, partially through connections that Corey has made for me, and it's an incredible place. Now, I'm in the Spanish wine world with Amada and Village Whiskey, so it's a true passion.
Yeah,
we
I think
love.
that's right. I mean, that's awesome though, because it gives you a completely different vantage point, right? I mean, I love when people aren't necessarily homegrown and they're coming in and looking at this industry and our particular challenges with a local wine industry through different lenses. So you have this wealth of experience and knowledge from outside our region, and then to be able to come in and be an active player and participant within the region with your special sets of skills and experiences only makes the industry and the regional strengths that much stronger. So we appreciate it, and we love the fact that you're out there advocating and supporting. But we also love your other experiences, and we love the restaurants, and we love what you're doing on the Spanish front as well. So it's not always all local all the time, and we do get outside of our comfort zone sometimes and experience some other things. So could you talk a little bit about what you do with your brands currently and kind of how you got there?
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, thank you for having me. It's nice to have both of you to get to chat with this afternoon. I joined Amada in 2019, actually as the general manager of Amada Philadelphia. I was coming from New York, where I'd worked for about 12 years in Michelin star and James Beard award-winning restaurants. At the time, coming into Amada Philadelphia, it was a very immersive experience. I lived, breathed Amada, and then COVID shut everything down 8 months later. So it was like a really exciting start and then just kind of a screeching halt. I had the pleasure of being part of the reopening of Garces restaurants, reopening First Amada Philadelphia, opening Village Whiskey, Tinto, the Garces Trading Company at the Sierra Center, and finally Amada Radnor. And I'm actually here at the Amada Radnor for the interview today. And, Amada became part of SPB Hospitality about a year and a half ago. It's a national restaurant group with Jay Alexander and Stony River as other major brands that they have. And we're now getting ready to launch Amada kind of on the national stage with first Amada in Chicago in early 2026. So it's been a really exciting journey. I've really become, very much in love with Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. I grew up in Minnesota, and there's some real similarities between kind of Minneapolis and greater Minnesota that are mirrored in Philadelphia and greater Pennsylvania, and I just love it here.
Yeah, it's the big city surrounded by agrarian farm communities, right? I mean,
Exactly. I spent many a times escaping St. Paul, Minneapolis to farms in Minnesota. My mother was a minister, and we would go to church conferences that were literally in farm country. And I get to do the same thing here with my daughters. It's great. We were at a farm last weekend for harvest celebrations.
yes, as two suburban dwellers, Rachel and I have the ability of having the best of both worlds. So you can
Yep.
zip into the city, 40 minutes into the city, or if you go another 40 minutes outside of the city, you're literally in Amish country. So I mean,
Yep.
it's you kind of get both paces,
The
which
sweet
is
spot.
yeah.
It really is the sweet spot. You can't beat it. So much to do either way.
Well, let's talk about your voluminous history in hospitality. The experiences in New York and working for really upper echelon organizations, and obviously what you're doing now as well. Your personal definition of hospitality, just beyond good service, right? I mean, what do you think it is that makes hospitality click on all cylinders, and really, how does that guide you in the sort of the day-to-day operational decisions you have to make?
I really enjoy this question. I spent some time in the art world in New York. I'm going to kind of wind that into my answer a
Love it.
little bit. I think the first to start, and this is a really hard question to kind of encapsulate, right? But I think the starting point is we have to separate what is different between good service and great hospitality, right? And I think there is a very simple point of bifurcation, right? And that is that good service is ultimately measurable. It's measured in standards, right? We can say we have the standard of a 1 minute greet. We can say we have a standard that, you make two great suggestions in that first interaction with the guest. You can say, well, then we have a 3 minute standard on how quickly you get that drink to the table, right? And you can measure every part of that in a standard, right? But great hospitality, it's not measurable, right?
Mhm.
It is something that exceeds quantitative. It's purely quantitative or qualitative at the end of the day. And so, I think it can make it really hard to define hospitality, where it's fairly simple to define good service, but great hospitality is much harder to define. So I want to draw on an artistic term to kind of think about that, and that is Gestalt, right? And that's an ugly German word with a really beautiful meaning. And it kind of, it's when something is more than the sum of its parts, right? And I think that can really resonate with what great hospitality is, right? It's underpinned by good service, high standards of service, but built on top of that, there are these interactions which build up feelings, right? Positive feelings, good emotions with a guest, right? And you can't purely define them. You can talk about what they might be. It might be the smile, that you greet them with. It might be asking a question about their day before you even start talking about the menu, right? And making a human connection. It's about eye contact, right? Things that aren't necessarily measurable, but they all layer upon each other to build something that becomes great hospitality.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one that most individuals deal with if they're on the operations side of the business, whether that's a winery tasting room or a restaurant or really any other business that's seated within the hospitality space, is payroll and your staff counts, and really how many people you actually need to execute the measurable service metrics, but then be able to have the time to deliver the je ne sais quoi, right, of hospitality. And I know this is something that Rachel and I have struggled a lot with clients and with our own businesses that we've been part of, which is it is really hard sometimes on a P&L to justify that extra body on the tasting room floor until it isn't. And it's like, well, we're only selling this much per hour, but there's no time to go deeper into wine education. There's no time to just have a conversation with a customer to see how their day is going and provide them restaurant recommendations, right? And you start to compress the ability little by little to provide value beyond just the service you're providing for what they're paying for. And I think that's probably one of the more common ones that I think all face.
Absolutely. It's, there are moments where strong leadership is saying, no, we have a need to provide something more than just, the perfect balance sheet for our guest.
Right.
Yeah,
And
this
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rach, please.
No. This is, I mean, we've talked about this. Like, this is a sticking point for me, is like that line of hospitality and like, how do you buffer it and what do you do? So this is, I mean, like, this is my bread and butter. Like, I love this stuff. And like, to be able to deliver really good hospitality, to be able to go over the top, to take the time to make the person feel like they're at home is like really, I think, the big sticking points of what we've always focused on, when they come into your space, is to create that atmosphere, but to be able to walk the line of it at the same time.
Absolutely.
But with that, I guess like I can kind of spin my question into this, is that what's a time when operational efficiency is like threatening to dilute the guest experience? Like, how do you navigate that tension? Like, what do you do when those two things are competing with each other?
That's a great question. So, I'm running restaurants, right? And higher end restaurants with a full seated experience, right? In order to be profitable, one of the biggest factors is turn time on the table, right? We need to get more people seated in the night to become profitable, right? So now there's pressure once you've filled all your tables for one seating to try to get that second or that third or that fourth seating
Mhm.
out of that table, right? And so that creates a natural pressure on turn time, right?
Like,
But you can't just keep shrinking your turn time. There's diminishing returns, right?
right.
And we all know that kind of awful feeling of somebody snatching away a plate before we were even done, and that feeling of, oh, I'm being rushed. They don't want me here anymore, right? So there's a real tension there, and you kind of have to solve for that in ways that both honor the speed, efficiency of service, but also the richness of hospitality, right? And so I think one approach is you have to take the guest perspective, right? That's where it all starts, right? Where are the moments where they don't care if you rush, right? Because they're there, right? And that's where you get back to those service standards, right? Greeting in a minute, right? Don't make them wait then. They don't want to wait. Getting them a drink right away. They don't want to wait then. Get them a drink as quickly as you can. Think about your drink offerings. Make sure they're all executable, right? When they pay, they're done. They may want to get out of there, like, right? They're not going to complain if you get their check back in 1 minute. So you attack these very specific points that really fall at the beginning and the end of the experience, right? And then you have to teach everybody to relax in between attacking those points and connect and bring hospitality to the table and let people like dwell in a beautiful space and good company and delicious food.
Yeah, it's funny. You're talking about the waiting for the check, and I'm thinking about in something personally from my life that I experienced, which was literally an effort to be hospitable, but backfired because it resulted in a misinterpretation of culture at the time, right? So, my wife and I, we honeymooned in Italy. The end of our trip, we were in Cinque Terre, and we had hiked, almost 10 miles that day in Cinque Terre, and had dinner reservations at a restaurant at the base of one of the small towns. And we wanted to experience the meal, but we were at the point in the day where we really just wanted to eat, get dessert, and go back to the inn that we were staying at.
Yeah, go hit the sack. It's been a long day.
Exactly. But they brought out their house-made limoncello and sat it on the table. And neither one of us really we just didn't want it. Like, we just didn't want the limoncello. It wasn't an option, right? I mean, it was there. And we probably sat there for 45 minutes just waiting for somebody to come back to drop the check. And, with every passing minute, and we're not doing the ugly American thing where we're not trying to make a scene. We're just hoping that they'll come eventually. But then it dawned on us that we haven't had any of this limoncello, and the check can't come before the limoncello is tasted. So I took one for the team, and I said to my wife, Gretchen, I'm like, fine, I will drink this limoncello.
You taking both?
I can't. I don't think so. I don't think so. I
You
did drink
really
her.
slept
I
well
did
that
drink her
night.
grappa
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
Tuscany. Yeah, we were in a similar situation at a fourth generation farm in Tuscany, and I had to drink her grappa and my grappa in order to continue the tasting. So I took one for the team there. But this was several
You're a
days
very
later.
generous man, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But no, I mean, immediately as soon as I took the limoncello, I drank the limoncello, the check arrived.
Yeah, the
And
check.
but there you go. It's sort of again this really interesting balancing act where you have the staff, and there's a cultural thing here too, but you have the staff that have been trained to wait,
Right.
Mhm.
right?
Well,
Give
and I
them their
think
space, give them their time, right?
absolutely, and that's where we go back to what we first talked about, right? And standards, right, for service are really important. But if some of those standards in a hospitality moment can be wrong, like all it needed was somebody to recognize that you were tired and wanted to go, right? But that's a human recognition. You can't put a standard on that, right?
Yeah,
And so without that, in the absence of that, if the standard was just to wait till someone took a sip of their limoncello, in a way they were being inhospitable from that moment.
right.
Yeah, body language is a big thing, and like we've learned that. Like, when you go to do a tasting and you approach the table, like I can tell in 10 seconds the kind of experience they want from me. I can read their body language, their eye contact, the lack thereof. So like, yes, the service standards, but I think there also has to be like a perception of like what is happening around you and when maybe some of those things need to be bent so you're not sitting for 45 minutes at a table with a shot of limoncello you don't want. But like it is, I think, a constant evolution of learning who's sitting at your table as you do this.
Yeah. And we've talked about this, Rachel, in one of the previous episodes on training and development, right? When you're identifying staff that
Mhm.
are going to be the composition of your guest experience, looking for intangibles,
Yep.
right? When you interview, we can train you on the menu, we can train you on Pennsylvania wine, we can train you on all these things. But if you're unable to read my body language in an interview, if you're
Mhm.
not coming with a level of enthusiasm, if you don't seem to have a passion to learn, right? All of these things are going to rear their heads at the worst time for the business. And
Yep.
it's usually going to be when they fail at reading the room, reading the customer, and delivering on the experience. And then that whole issue can snowball because you're not only dealing at that point with maybe a lower bill than you would expected, right? An unhappy customer who's now not going to come back. But
Mhm.
you're also dealing with Google and Yelp and the impact that social media has on that person's experience. So you amplify everything when if you can address it at the root and
Right.
really identify personnel that can do some of those things, those natural things, which again, it's not for everybody. Not
Mhm.
everybody can read a person, react, and make those decisions. But to do the best that you can in that space, I think it really does start with the hiring process.
100%.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your team, Joseph. And you hire really solid people, but what systems or rituals do you have in place for your team that kind of keeps them grounded, right? That makes them recognize those values in hospitality during the really busy or high volume service.
Absolutely. You're asking about my team, but I'm gonna talk about how we do it institutionally
That's
as
great.
a restaurant, as hospitality services, because I think it's been really built well into a certain type of restaurant. And if you probably already have it in front of you, but you may not be using it quite right. Right. So there are two what I call inflection points of every service, right? And the first is family meal and the second is pre-shift, right? And these two moments, they can just become part of the habits of every day, and then they're not impactful and they don't matter. They're just there, right? But well used, they can really ground people and get them ready for both service and hospitality. And I think family meal starts that, right? And at least in the restaurants where I work, we set the restaurant and then we have family meal, right? And that family meal hopefully isn't people grabbing a plate and going to a corner, right? You want to try to get them together. You want to possibly get them sitting at the same table, and you need to sit with them. That's really important. I learned that from Ken Oringer at Toro in New York, and he would chide managers who worked through family meal. I was one of them because I'm a worker. I was trying to get things done and
Yeah.
impress everyone, right? And he sat me down one day and he said, "Listen, this is your time to be with them, to just be with them. Go
Mhm.
eat with your team." right? And I think there was a huge lesson in that, right? It's time in which we honor the fact that we are humans, right? Where we laugh together, we share a story together from our weekend, we have some human time, right? And then typically pre-shift comes right after that, right? And so there's suddenly a change. And I like that change to almost be choreographed. If you were sitting for family meal, you stand up for pre-shift, right? And because that now is the time where we transition kind of into our marching orders, and we teach, we inspire, and we send the team into service, right? So I think both of those two moments that are in most restaurants already, if you really think about them and you really use them purposefully, can really help your team go grounded into service.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And what's really interesting is you take it beyond the service moments and you think about you have staff that might be thinking about looking for another position elsewhere, right? All of those moments, those shared moments, their coworkers, their direct reports, right? Management, all play a role in a decision that comes down to, do I want to stay at this place or do I want to go elsewhere? And it's very easy for leadership and management to lose sight of that human connection. And the minute that you do, the relationship between you and your staff changes and you become expendable as an employer. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so important to try to cultivate that relationship and make the time. And I think it's what really separates strong, effective leaders, really in any organizational setting. Even outside of wine and hospitality, that if they need to be able to justify the time spent not behind a computer, not behind just banging away on reports, and actually make that connection, because it'll go a long way from a retention basis as well.
Absolutely. And again, it's something that you can't exactly value on a balance sheet, but is so impactful. I'm blessed that I have employees at Amada, Philadelphia that have been there for all 20 years that we've been in business.
That's awesome.
Right. And you can't put a price on that. The consistency that they bring, the heart that they bring to it, the fact that they've raised families around this business, they're just so invested in it, it's something that is extremely powerful, and it's also a great responsibility as a leader.
Absolutely.
No, I think there's all these different things that come into this, and taking the time and the energy. So you have like kind of the manager balance with the staff's balance with the customer, and there's so many different parts that go into hospitality, right? The back of the house, the front of the house. But now as we're evolving and we're going through all of this, like you have the technology component, and this is kind of what we talked about with like the AI a couple of weeks ago, is can technology coexist with genuine hospitality, or does it inherently create distance between the staff and the guests?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think we had to be really careful with this, right? We need technology, right? Technology helps us become better operators. But we have to, I think it helps to think of technology as a well, right? You want to drink from it, you don't want to drown in it, right? And so I think that's kind of where I start with that. And I think Open Table or Resi, these kind of reservation systems are good examples that we've had. Like, right, we haven't necessarily had AI in restaurants for very long, but we've had that in restaurants now for a couple decades, right? And I remember when they first kind of came into restaurants, and how much it changed things, but also how much it could do for you. So, right, I think you need to be very careful. You use that technology in the appropriate moments. They're usually planning moments, right? They're absolutely not when somebody is stepping in front of you waiting to be welcomed into the restaurant, right? In that moment, you need to look up, you need to smile, and you need to connect, right? And if you're staring at the screen trying to figure out where you're going to put them, you've already lost.
Yeah. I love that all of I think originally, right, the impetus for all of those reservation apps was to eradicate the need for your hosts to manage like phone in reservations. But the reality is all it really does now is just block a time, because any good restaurants are still picking up the phone to call the guests before they arrive.
Absolutely. But the other thing that it has allowed us to do is that we are able to log information. Some information is now
Yes.
automated in these systems, and that is really powerful. Knowing that Sam Jones is coming in and he drinks, the Cune Rioja every time he comes in, can allow these incredible hospitality moments, like a waiter just showing up with the bottle before it's even asked for, right? But it has to
Yeah.
happen before, in the planning, not in the moment of hospitality and service.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is a point we talked with Dustin Engel from Elegant Disruption on the AI piece a few episodes ago, which is it can be a very powerful CRM based tool, right? I mean, it can amplify hospitality if used the right way. But I loved the well metaphor. You know, I love the well metaphor. It's like everything in moderation, right? I mean, let's you can use it. Don't make it define your brand, define your experience in that way.
Absolutely. Don't drown in it. I think that's the big mistake.
Yeah. So this has been a lot of fun, Joseph, as I suspected it would be. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now. Are you doing the regular treks back and forth to Chicago to try to get things ready, or are you?
We have an incredible team that is out there building our space. They are working round the clock. The space will be handed over to, the operations side of the team in early 2026. We're certainly, starting things like hiring GMs and AGMs and starting to put our team together. So I've been out there a couple times, walk through the space, meet people. I'll be out there a little bit more. Very recently, we were getting ready to celebrate Amada, Philadelphia's big milestone of 20 years.
I saw that. Yeah, congratulations.
Big celebration. But just very proud. Jose Garces has really created this concept from his heart. Amada is actually the name of his maternal grandmother, who was the inspiration for his first restaurant. And so we've really been just telling that story and enjoying this moment of 20 years of Amada and getting ready to launch into the next 20 years of Amada, which really does begin with Amada Chicago, which again brings us full circle to Jose's hometown.
Yeah, that's so
Awesome.
cool. And I love the fact that there's a suburban Amada now. I mean, and Radnor, Pennsylvania's location is 3 years old.
Yes, it opened in March of 2023.
Right. So
just a week apart from my third daughter. Barely remember that month.
I can imagine. Oh man.
Yeah. That talk about a balancing act, right? And that's a whole nother podcast episode. Well, I love how this conversation has really dovetailed into a lot of the conversations we've been having recently, which is, customer first mentality, AI, tools to improve hiring and training and development, wine education. I mean, there's so many interwoven themes that we get to deal with, but I love being able to have a guest like you here that you're in the weeds, right? I mean, you're on that front line dealing with these challenges every single day in a very up-tempo, high-paced, high-profile, restaurant organization and brand that's now
Absolutely.
looking to go nationals. The stakes are super high for you guys, and we wish nothing but the best for these next few months so that everything kind of goes off without a hitch. I mean, I had the opportunity to meet with you back at Amada Radnor about 6-8 months ago, something like that, and it was fantastic. Rach, if you haven't been down there and you don't want to,
I'll have to make the journey.
This is fantastic.
I'm in the private dining room of Amada Radnor right now. Please come visit again soon. Rachel, we'd love to have you. Everyone listening at home, we'd love to have you at Amada Radnor, Philadelphia, or Village Whiskey, also in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and who are those artists behind you? Just I'm just curious if you know who the artists
I believe the name of the artist is Juan Monroe, and I'm gonna have to look it up again after this interview. He's a Spanish artist who did wood prints. He's a little obscure, but he ordains our walls here in the private dining room at Amada Radnor. And if you come, we can stare at them together for a little while we sip a glass of cava and really just engage with the art, right? Have some human.
That's how the artist would have intended it to be. Yeah. All right, Joseph, thanks again for joining us today. Don't be a stranger. I'm sure we'll get to see each other at a regional wine function in the near future as well. Rach, we'll have to make sure that you're tagging along so we can all sip a little something together.
I love that.
Me too.
All right,
thanks, guys. I really enjoyed the time with you today.
Have a good one. Cheers.
All right, cheers, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for Strategy Sessions. Please follow, comment, like, and subscribe at Thirsty Bandit Co.